U.S. Congress urges World Bank to suspend loans to Uganda over Anti-Homosexuality Act.
Under the letter of the law, World Bank personnel in Uganda themselves are going to be required to report people, are going to be required to discriminate against people. And the World Bank has a structure in place, a framework called the ESF, the Environmental and Social Framework, which sets forth that the World Bank will not issue loans to countries that are going to implement those loans in a discriminatory fashion. So right now, if the World Bank continues to support Uganda's health sector, its education sector, its infrastructure, those working on those projects will be required to discriminate. LGBTIQ people will be turned away, or worse, will be turned into the police.
A group of U.S. Congress members, along with several human rights organizations, has called on the World Bank Group to suspend loans to Uganda in response to the country's recently enacted Anti-Homosexuality Act. The controversial law, which includes provisions for the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, has sparked international outrage and concerns over human rights violations. While the U.S. Congress is actively urging the World Bank to take action against Uganda, some critics question the inconsistency in the U.S. stance, particularly regarding the death penalty in certain states within the country. The Anti-Homosexuality Act in Uganda has drawn widespread criticism due to its draconian provisions, including the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality. This law mandates state-sponsored discrimination and violence against LGBTQ+ individuals, sparking a humanitarian crisis that goes against World Bank's stated policies of promoting inclusion and non-discrimination. Responding to this, nearly a dozen members of Congress and various human rights organizations have called for the suspension of all current and future loans to Uganda until the law is overturned. While the U.S. Congress is advocating for the suspension of loans to Uganda over the Anti-Homosexuality Act, some critics raise questions about the country's own stance on the death penalty. Certain states within the U.S. have laws that allow for capital punishment, which is a topic of debate and controversy. The inconsistency in the U.S. position is a point of concern for those advocating for human rights. The World Bank Group is facing mounting pressure from advocacy groups and Congress members to take decisive action against Uganda's discriminatory law. In the past, the World Bank has postponed loans to Uganda in response to similar concerns. Recently, the bank has announced that it is carrying out a review of lending to Uganda and will not disperse any funding or agree on new lending during this period. Advocates argue that continuing to fund projects in the country would send the wrong message to both the Ugandan government and other nations considering similar discriminatory laws. The current situation in Uganda has sparked international concern and condemnation over the Anti-Homosexuality Act, which mandates state-sponsored discrimination and violence against LGBTQ+ individuals. In response, U.S. Congress members, along with human rights organizations, are urging the World Bank to suspend loans to Uganda until the law is repealed. While the U.S. takes a strong stance against the Anti-Homosexuality Act, critics point to the inconsistency in the country's support for the death penalty in certain states. As the World Bank reviews its lending to Uganda, the international community will be closely watching for a definitive response that upholds the values of inclusion and non-discrimination.